There we go. There we go. All right. So again, welcome to everyone to the Lillooet Regional Invasive Species Society and the Lillooet Agriculture and Food Society webinar. And today I'm glad that we are here with you on the unceded and traditional territory of the St'át'imc. And I'm super excited to have two people, Chelsea Timms and Sue Senger, to speak today. And I'm going to just pass the torch right over to Chelsea, and she can give her own little background and welcome and introduction, and she can just dive right into her presentation. So welcome, Chelsea, and thank you for being here.
Thanks. Thank you, Jackie. Yeah, thanks for having me, everybody. I'm just going to try and give a short little condensed version of a larger presentation that I have just for explaining basically what's going on at the place where I work. So that's the Ucwalmixc Community Farm. It's up in the Lillooet community, so right above town, and I've only been working, this will be my second season working for them. But the organization and the farm itself has been going for quite a long time. The Ucwalmixc Center has been going for 30 years and the garden's been going for over 10 years. So yeah, just been building on a lot of progress that's already there. And I'm going to give a bit of a preview of what we're going to do this season and compared to how that happened last season. And hopefully you guys have some questions at the end. I'm going to pull up my presentation here and share my screen. Okay. So everyone should be able to see that now, I think.
Yep, we can see your screen.
Okay, great. Okay, so yes, this is a picture of one of our farm fields there. You can see that was taken this summer when there was a lot of smoke hanging over the gardens. Yeah, it's up in Lillooet, as I mentioned, and it's hosted by the Ucwalmixc Center Society. So that office building is right beside the farm, and that is the Indigenous nonprofit that has been there for 30 years, and they do many different things aside from host the farm. They lead language programs and they support members in all kinds of different ways. They work with a lot of the elders in the community, and they're just a great organization and really an asset to the St'át'imc community and to the wider Lillooet community. So I'm grateful to be working there, and they are also the ones that basically are kind of hosting the physical land where the farm takes place. So it's about 5 acres in total, located right beside the actual center. And we'll move on to the next slide. You can see in that first one there, that's a picture of our fields early on. That's a picture of myself with our staff from last year, our core staff anyways. So this is just a bit of a list of the infrastructure we have. We've got about 5 acres, with 1 acre of that being fenced with an electric field and cultivated already. A very large orchard. There's about 200 plus mixed trees in there. Last year, we just decided to turn one of our fields into a perennial section. So it's about a 60 by 100-foot section of all mixed different. There's some food crops in there, some herbs, some flowers, all different plants that we hope will come back and will spread. It will compete with the other weeds that are very present naturally, and also just bring lots of other benefits. We have a large greenhouse we're hoping to get replaced this year. We use a tiller usually. I mean, I only used it once last year, but this year we'll likely manage different sections of our farm using different methods, but we likely will use a tiller at least once. We've got a walk-in cooler and dry storage, which are also new projects that we'll have access to this year. And then we're working on a multi-purpose food security building that would be space for workshops, as well as different types of food processing and community member traditional foods. Yeah, so as you can see, we have a good amount of infrastructure, and really we just need more people involved and more people to share their skills. The next slide is just a picture of some of the infrastructure I mentioned, so you can kind of get a feel for it. If all of you are local, you may have already seen parts of the farm, or yeah, if you've seen parts of the farm, maybe you haven't known what is all included in that, but it really has grown slowly over the years to be a pretty large area with really lots of potential and already a good amount of infrastructure that we're building on. So um, this was kind of what it looked like last year, and then got greener and greener and more full of weeds and vegetables. But the only things we did up there were there was a cover crop I planted in the fall, and then we added compost and just a basic organic fertilizer, but nothing super heavy or serious in terms of soil care or weed management, really. We did mulch everything. We used what landscaping fabric we had to cover things for a while, but the weeds were really bad considering it went from this being covered in weeds that were weed whacked and raked off the field to basically that being tilled in and then composted, as in there was a ton of weed seeds in there. Our vegetables did really well this year. And so our soil is pretty sandy, but I think it is fairly healthy. And it's been full of sunflowers for at least 2 years, maybe more than that. And they really spread. So I heard that sunflowers detoxify the soil. I don't know if anybody knows anything else about what sunflowers do, but they were kind of a cover crop in that garden for a couple of years. So this is a bit of a summary of what we did last year, just in terms of structure and how it went down. In terms of the harvest of our food, we had 6 of us working together at one point. Myself as a manager with 4 people total working on the farm crew, who were all working between like 28 and 30 to 35 hours a week. An orchard manager slash someone that helped us just with anything else we needed help with on the farm. And then a finance manager who was working out of the Ucwalmixc Center and helping manage that side of the project. We were able to donate to the food bank twice a week, and as well as offer a free U-pick from that same 100 by 100-foot plot to the community. It was we didn't get a ton of people coming up over the year. I think people were just not sure quite what was going on still, but it is something we're going to offer again this year on a smaller scale. We did tons of fruit processing from the orchard that is a relatively mature orchard now. So you can imagine there's a lot of fruit that comes off one tree, and there's 200 trees in there. So more fruit than we knew what to do with, since we weren't selling anything last year. Daily farm field training, like everyone that I was working with was relatively new to vegetable farming. So there was a lot of working but then a lot of training and teaching as well. And that was great. We also had a few volunteers, a few informal and a few formal workshops. We are really lucky to have access to a food processing kitchen in the Ucwalmixc Center. So they have a kitchen down there they rent out for different events, and a really large dehydrator and a bunch of other equipment. It's very much just resources that have been accumulated over the years by people in the community with passion for food security projects. And at some point, we're hoping to maybe move the focus of food processing over to our food security building, because it's not ideal to have everything happening out of the Ucwalmixc Center, which is more like an office and workshop space. But we were really fortunate that we were able to do a lot of that last year. So our employees also got to learn a whole bunch of food processing skills, and we were able to put away over 4,000 pounds of fresh produce. And then we donated tons of dried stuff over the year as well to different events. And so all of that was really gratifying and really busy whirlwind summer. Just some of the pictures of stuff we had going on there, some of our dried goods and our crops. Typical, like what we would donate to the food bank in the crates there each week, usually just a mix of whatever we had available. And so that was a really nice model, because it was like good. We could experiment and work together to learn how to grow different things, and we didn't have the pressure of going to market every week. And we still had really people that wanted our food. So we were lucky we had access to grants to pay people through the Ucwalmixc Center to do this work, because even if you're not doing market farming, it's a lot of work. And I think everyone we worked with this year got a taste of what it's like to grow a whole bunch of different annual vegetables in a big space. And it was awesome. We had a chance to learn a lot of different areas of food security. These are pictures of some of the traditional foods and just some of the apricot and the cannings that got done by other people that work in and around the Ucwalmixc Center. different families that have been a part of like supporting that land and supporting that center. Got to come and do canning with some of the elders and do fish canning. And so that's another important part of this whole project, is just collaborating with other people in the community and making sure that we are, always making space for traditional foods and for people to prioritize like their home gardening projects and not just, what's going on the farm. So this is very wordy slide, no need to read all of it, but it's a summary of everything that we're going to have going on this year. So instead of growing a huge amount of free food and trying to get it out in all these different ways, the plan this year was to downsize our community plot. And so we'd still be donating to the food bank, and I'd still have an opportunity to work with people in more of a teaching capacity. And then the other side of our field, which is about 110 feet in length and is almost 200 feet the other way. So splitting that in half, we'll have that side of the field managed by 2 incubator farmers. So the incubator farming model is something we're trying new this year. Essentially, instead of hiring a whole bunch of people to work together in the community plot, I redirected some of the grant money that we would use to pay 2 new farmers who already have a little bit of experience to grow for the Lillooet Farmers Market. Part of the reason we did this is because it's hard to manage 6 people, and I didn't necessarily want to do that, as well as it's really mixed levels of experience. Because we have so much room and we have access to different resources that are supported through the Ucwalmixc Center and through the community who wants to see the land preserved for food security, whereas not everybody necessarily wants to farm or garden or be involved in that project. We wanted to give the opportunity to 2 new growers to take care of the soil on that side and see how they could support themselves through growing food this season. I'm sure a lot of you know that there's different, oh, Sarah's entering there. I'm not sure if anyone else can see that. Okay. Yeah, there's going to be new faces at the farmers market this year. Hopefully they'll be our incubator farmers that we've hired, but just in general, there's some changes in who's growing vegetables this year. And so we felt like this was an important model to try out, to give some people who have experience a chance to do their own thing a little bit more. That would be typically really hard if you were trying to start your own farm and get capital for all your own stuff in your first year that you need for growing vegetables for market. They also just have very complementary skill sets. The people that we actually hire for these positions have worked together already, have worked together on One Love Organic Farm and for Seed to Culture. And so they have experience growing in this area, which is great. They have experience growing together. And they're both really excited about getting a chance to do their own thing this year and to not have to absorb all the risk of doing that while also getting to provide their community with well-grown food, hopefully. So yeah, that's a bit of the structure this year. Everything is still rolling out, many different moving parts. Some more photos of our plants for you. And if anyone has questions, I guess we could leave those till the end. And it's probably 10 minutes, so I'll pass the mic.
Awesome. Thanks, Chelsea. That's so great. Oh, I have questions too, but I will defer that. I think what we'll do is we'll go directly to Sue Senger, and Sue is the owner operator of Rose Hill Farm and out the Texas Creek area, and she's got some information to share with us about her management of weeds on her property. And it's some really interesting and neat things that she's been doing just to try to manage specific species, because she definitely has a few of them on her property. Sue, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Hi, thanks. So I think most of you know me. So as Jackie says, I live out here on Rose Hill Farm, and I have a number of really significant invasive species. So I've got Horiolism, and burdock is just outrageous, and various things like that. But one of the pieces that I wanted to share with you today was the progress I've made on cheatgrass. So cheatgrass is this really early annual growing grass, and it looks really beautiful in the spring, turns really green, but it actually goes to seed quickly, and it doesn't have a lot of forage value, so almost nothing eats it. and it spreads really badly, and it's a major fire hazard. So I've been struggling with that on my farm. So I got my farm, I moved in December of, I go down here, December of 2012. And can you guys see this okay? Just trying to figure out, can I actually put it up?
Yeah, it's not bad. You're just
Oh,
still
there we
in,
go.
yeah, there you go.
Can you guys read the text? Because on my screen it's covered. Let's see if I can change that. Okay.
We can
there
see
we go.
it.
Okay, good. So this is just I was trying to find some pictures so that it would be easier for me to explain this. So basically part of my farm is a hillside and it's covered in cheatgrass. So when I moved in 2013, this is a picture. There's a doe and a fawn on the hillside. It's June. And basically there's a little bit of green grass on the hillside, but going all the way up the hillside is cheatgrass. And this is sort of like my property is almost like divided in half here. So like the one side I graze my horses on and I'm doing stuff, and this other side with the cheatgrass I just ignored for a long time. The problem was it was getting worse and worse, and it was a big fire hazard, and none of my neighbors were really happy with me. And so I was trying to figure out what to do with it. And ironically, the answer was cows. So I got my first cows out on the fields in 2018. This is the same hillside that was covered in cheatgrass. And 1 year later, this is 2019, it's converted over to pasture quite nicely. Now, the hillside was an exceptional opportunity to do this. But it was really cool. And I kind of went, wow, okay, the cows did such an amazing job with the way they're grazing, and they go in and they eat a lot of the weeds as well. They take out a lot of the shrubs. So I was really, really impressed. And if you keep going, so you're looking up the hill, at the top of the hill is another pasture. And, it's covered in cheatgrass. So this is the same June of 2019. And all of that brown is the cheatgrass. It's already come up, gone green, gone to seed, right? There's no forage value in it. And so I was trying to figure out how I could get the cows to do better work. And I came up with this idea of basically digging, or not even digging, just pulling out the cheatgrass. If you grab hold of it, it just pops out with all the dirt. And I just pulled out these sections of the cheatgrass to make bare ground. And you can see I piled it all up. I left it right where it was in a big, huge pile. And I seeded with pasture mix in these little islands through this cheatgrass in the field. So this is just another closer picture. And you can see all I was doing is pulling out that brown cheatgrass and leaving all the perennials. And then I just basically scattered some pasture mix, a little bit of raking. That's really all I did. And this is what it looked like by August. So that was June 26, 2 months later. This is the same place. So those brown piles in the bottom here on the sort of right side of the screen, those are those giant piles of cheatgrass that I had just put all in one place. So you can see they've shrunken down in size. They haven't disappeared, and there's still a bunch of cheatgrass new growing around them. But then there's these patches that have come in where I seeded. And so I think the next picture, yeah. So where the arrow is pointing, this is one of those islands that were seeded in. And so again, because it's really hard for me, like I don't have the equipment to like till a whole couple of acres of a field and reseed it. That's not possible. So I was trying this as an experiment, and then I turned the cows out. And I was really excited because so that orange line is kind of the division between the left-hand side is what was all cheatgrass before, and the right-hand side was always pretty good. And the cows have moved over and I've started to graze through that section as well. So I just wanted to share that as this really interesting example of using small cows. These are Dexters, so they're minis. Using small cows to sort of regenerate the land on a small farm. And it's been pretty effective. I was able to train my cows to eat burdock. And I mean that really literally train them to eat it. So there's this really cool book. I can't quite remember the name, but it's something along the lines of Teach Your Cows to Eat Weeds. And you just basically, every day I would just give the steers some burdock leaves. And initially they didn't really want them. Then they got interested. Then they would stand and wait for me to give them burdock. And when I turned them out into a field that had 3 and 4 foot tall burdock plants, they went in and cleaned the whole thing out. So it's really an interesting system where you can take advantage of their natural tendency to want to eat things. They've been pretty good about the alyssum. So hoary alyssum is quite toxic to horses, but the cows do okay. So I've been able to graze the cows over the hoary alyssum as well to try and knock it back at the right time. And so it's just been, yeah, it's been quite the adventure, but the production level on the farm just keeps getting better and better as I use the cows. And so, yeah, I think that's all I had. So it's just an example of, yeah, a slightly different approach to how to manage weeds, right? Trying to get some extra leg power and mouth power behind doing those conversions.
That's awesome, Sue. Those pictures tell like 1,000 stories, because it's amazing. I mean, cheatgrass that's what, I mean, it comes up ahead of time. I actually don't even have it in my presentation, but it is one thing because it's everywhere and it's so difficult. But on a farm to farm basis, it can really decrease your forage value. It can cause issues with, you know, getting in ears of animals and all the rest of it. I pick it out of my lab's back. Like, she'll go and just, even in the winter, and then I won't notice. And if I'm petting her, I have to kind of like push her fur backwards, and then I pull out all the seeds. And the vet has told me numerous stories about like dealing with these terrible seeds from cheatgrass. So that's really, it's a hopeful story of the fact that just even the seeding piece alone, and then using the cattle in conjunction, is integrated pest management. It's like using multiple tools to attack the same thing on a little by little basis. So that's super awesome.
Back up a bit. I've tried a bunch of different, I mean, I tried raking it out, digging it out, doing different. I haven't found anything that works quite as well as this method of you just wait till it's unfortunately already gone to seed, but you can just literally pull it up by your hand. It comes out in big, huge clumps, and I pile it all up and then seed at that stage. And it's worked the best out of everything. I've converted, even without the cows, I've converted sections just doing that, and then watering it. And you can always use a string trimmer or whatever to mow it. But it's actually, I've converted out a bunch of the farm at this point, and it's exciting because exactly, the cheatgrass just destroys the forage value. There's nothing there. Yeah. So it's been it's the one thing that's working. And in terms of the other as well, other plants, like even when I pull out huge sections of burdock, I reseed right away as well. And it makes an enormous difference in terms of how fast the burdock comes back in, because it's being outcompeted. So
yeah, the seed is really important. I'm looking more and more at, even in our own operations with Elris, getting some advice from Premier Seeds, and they've done some work with our Okanagan neighbors, and just getting a seed mix that we can use in different areas here, I think is gonna help a lot too. So thank you so much. I'm gonna move along here and then just save your questions till the end so we can talk to them. But I did want to share my screen just to quickly show you. I'll show you a little bit more about, you can see on that one side there, that's what the cheatgrass is. And this is what it can look like in a bigger section underneath the trees. It's nasty stuff. And in the US, they actually treat it. They actually do some burning and seeding, and they do different things to deal with it. So now I'm going to give you a, if I can find my presentation here. Here we go. So I'm just going to give you a quick overview of some species that you should be concerned about and just watching for in your farms as for this region. And I'll come back to this picture later, but you can see the white stuff growing in that field is not supposed to be there. So thank you so much for attending today's presentation. If you want a full list of our party species, just visit our website. You can see pictures with identification there. And if you have an unknown species, just send me some good pictures and I'll give you some advice. So just so you know why we should be concerned, I'm going to give you a brief overview. You can see This picture on the top left, there is knotweed that is growing through concrete, and infrastructure like houses and sidewalks and driveways. This can be lifted and damaged, including water and sewage lines. And some properties in the UK, you can't even get house insurance if you've got knotweed on your property. Obviously, like Sue was talking about, you need to manage invasives for fire hazard. So this is a picture of my son and my husband quite a long time ago, but just did burn off the property actually this past weekend, decreasing the fuel. But what happens with cheatgrass is it creates this continuous mat of fuel. The picture of that poor little boy has that's a burn and a blister caused by toxic sap from an invasive species, mostly a garden one. It's a spurge. So all the spurges have two different degrees. Not everybody reacts in the same way, but this was something called myrtle spurge or donkey tail spurge. And then as you can see, if you have livestock on the property, and even just in the area, there's horses can pick up, your dogs can pick up burdock burrs, and it can cause them health issues. So I'm going to switch to plants now and give you an overview of some of the ones that I think that are important for you to be aware of. Hoary cress is one of our higher priority species in our region. We don't have very many sites, but this is an example of what it can do in a winter grazing area. So this is local to our area, and this hoary cress just loved the disturbance, loved where everything else was grazed out, and then likely contaminated hay brought this invasive into this winter feeding area. It's a creeping rooted perennial in the mustard family. It grows about 60 centimeters tall, and it has a cluster of white flowers on the top. And it's definitely not palatable to livestock. We have it in town. So there's only one site across the river on Highway 40, but definitely we have it in town and along Highway 99 out towards the lakes. Borealism, as Sue mentioned, is another one to be concerned about. This isn't a picture here, thankfully. This is a picture from my TNRD colleague that shows a whole entire field on one side of Borealism, and that it was actually in the neighboring field where they hayed, and they took the hay to a buyer, and the buyer recognized that this hay had Borealism is a contaminant, and refused actually to take it. So thankfully it wasn't moved, but this is a way that infestations can move. So Borealism is an annual to a short-lived perennial. So it has a very long flowering time from May until October, and it just keeps making seed. It grows between 30 centimeters and almost a meter tall, and it has tiny little white clusters at the top of its stems. And like Sue said, it's toxic to horses if they eat a lot of it. It can cause fever, lymphedema, and laminitis, which is that inflammation inside the hoof. And they tend to avoid eating it, but if it's there, and there's another living plant next to it, and they will eat it. And then obviously if it's in hay, they won't know, and they'll eat it in the hay. This picture that on the left-hand side is from Chase. The other one I wanted to give you an idea, and it's not something we do a lot of treatment for. It's quite prevalent in our area, especially along roadsides where there's alfalfa, is something called parasitic daughter. So it's actually not a plant at all. It's that viney like red sort of spaghetti plant, and it is it contaminates hay. It prefers legumes, so that's why it really likes alfalfa fields. And basically it can get caught in highway mowing equipment and spread. And it's an annual, so it creates those little seeds, those little white chickpea looking seeds. You can see them right here. And it produces a lot of seeds. So one little clump can produce up to 16,000 seeds. And unfortunately, it can stay viable in the soil for up to 60 years. So once you have it, you really need to deal with it. And I've been told by many farmers that you can get rid of it fairly easily by tiger torching it. But obviously with our dry climate and my husband being in the wildfire service, I need to be careful about just telling you to use fire. So and definitely in certain times of the year, you will not be able to use it at all because it could be a huge fire risk to be using tiger torch. But it's just one thing, if you recognize it, to be able to remove the host, so those seeds can't send up the little vine. And that, by weed whacking down alfalfa and keeping things short, you tend to lose the viability of those seeds. The other thing that I wanted to point out that is a little harder to identify is something called sulfur cinquefoil. It's a perennial plant in the rose family, and it has 5 lobes of the leaves in like a palmate or a hand shape, and has a light yellow flower with 5 petals. It grows 30 to 70 centimeters tall, centimeters, I should say, tall, and it flowers in June and July. But as you can see, it can take over large sections of pasture land, and it can contaminate hay and livestock bedding material, and it's definitely not palatable to grazing animals. So it reduces not only forage values in your fields, but if it jumps over into the forest and rangelands, then you've got deer and such that can't also have food. This is a property, again, in my neighboring community, neighboring area. It's near Pritchard, near Kamloops. But we do have some places that aren't quite as bad as this, but are covered in sulfur cinquefoil. Fountain has it for one. It can be hard to identify because there's 27 potent like cousins of the same plant. So if you're concerned that you think you might have it, then I can help by identifying it. You have to actually use this, like actually look at the seeds under a microscope. They have little wrinkles and little lines on them. Again, a picture from Kamloops, but if you go out Marble Canyon, you'll see this plant quite prevalently, and throughout our region. Spotted knapweed can take over fields and create these monocultures. So it can grow over 1.5 meters tall. It has a single head on the stem that are pink or purple in color, and it's called spotted because of these bracts that are underneath the flowering place. So it can create dense infestation, and it can displace native vegetation as well as pasture land. And it's definitely not palatable to livestock. And it also causes skin irritation for people. So when you're pulling it, you need to wear gloves and protective clothing. One thing that is interesting about spotted knapweed is that there are several what they call bioagents that have been released on infestations. And biocontrol is an invasive plant management technique involving the natural enemies of the plant to control infestations. But it often takes decades to approve these agents for use on infestations, and it's so that we are sure they won't impact native species. Thankfully, spotted knapweed bioagent research and releases happened like decades ago, and so there's quite a number of agents, including root feeding weevils and seed head flies. And so what we've seen over time is that those bioagents do reduce the seed because they're short-lived perennials to annuals, and the seed creates obviously more plants. But as the bioagents knock back the seed production and the vigor of the plant, other native plants next to it can really increase in vigor. So it means that you could get it down to maybe a size where you could maybe bring in some cows to graze on it, do some seeding, and then gradually start to transition that into a complete monoculture from the original, like in the pasture. So some good news on some integrated pest management techniques there. The other thing I wanted to point out that won't necessarily affect your farm initially, but it's the insect that's associated with it that we're concerned about, that is currently not in BC yet, or Canada. But this is called tree of heaven. It originally comes from China. We have done a preliminary inventory. There's about 62 sites within Lillooet and the surrounding district. This tree reproduces by seeds, roots, and suckers, and it looks very similar to sumac, except the leaves have a little tiny gland at the base of them, and often the leaves, if you crush them, can smell foul, like burnt rubber or peanut butter. But once you have it, it's very difficult to get rid of, because as soon as you cut it, it suckers like crazy. So this is a photo of the tree of heaven stump in Ashcroft, and you can see how the roots have lifted the blacktop, and it obviously creates damage. So the key thing, though, that we're concerned about, and the researchers in the Summerland Research Station are very concerned about, is the spotted lanternfly. So this fly or insect has likes to mate and to have it's a host. The tree of heaven is a host for it. And this insect is originally from Asia, and it kills the plants by sucking the sap or sucking on the saps from the leaves and the stems, and they feed in swarms. And what happens is they can attack more than 70 different species of trees and plants, including cultivated grapes, fruit trees, black walnut, maples. So you can see how it's a threat to our wine and fruit industry when, like, it's not a matter of if this fly is coming, it's when, because we're seeing it move throughout the US very fast. Okay, so the other things I just wanted to point out are two other insects. European fire ant, not so much damage to agriculture species, more to humans and to, you know, different things like that. They are they're an ant that is not native to Canada and North America, first found in BC in 2000, and it has a venomous sting and a bite. But the way it's going to get here, because the females can't fly, is that they come in on soil, or they come in on mulch, or they come in on something that's could be agriculture. So it's very important to understand where you're bringing your soil or your additives from, and you're not, you know, carrying hitchhiking insects. The brown marmorated stink bug, on the other hand, is definitely something that could impact our agriculture species. It was first discovered in the Fraser Valley in 2015. And it's also in the Okanagan, and they're monitoring the spread. So in both the young and the adult stages, this insect feeds on fruits and vegetables, and they damage them by puncturing the flesh with their mouth parts. And it results in bruising and dead areas in fruit and plants. So they feed on over 100 different plants. And in the mid-US, they've caused $37 million worth of damage just to the apple industry alone. So they also have urban problems, like they like to swarm houses to find wintering spots. My mom has them. She's given me samples so I can show people, but you know, they're just, people don't love them. But the agriculture impacts are what are key and are important to, because we have a lot of stink bugs. We just don't have the stink bugs you can see over here on the antenna, these white bands. Those are one of the key distinguishing features from our other stink bugs. So I just wanted to go quickly through some best management practices. Is just learn to identify invasives, remove small infestations because it's easy to when you can, and then clean your equipment and gear. This is so important. I've seen time and time again is the movement of gear and equipment and trailers and mowing and tilling. That's what's going to move invasives. And also to soil movement. So soil movement, whether you're moving it to different places on your farm or you're moving soil additives into the farm, be careful what's there. If it's the same invasives, then it's a lower risk, of course. No soil is completely invasive free. So the other thing I wanted to just pass along is plant identification tips. If you have something that's, you don't know what it is and it's odd and you really want to get it identified, I really appreciate good photographs. So things, you need an overview of the entire plant. This is blueweed. You need a picture of the flower, if possible, if it's actually flowering, a picture of the stem and the leaves, and if possible, a picture of the root. If you have a lot of plants, of course, it's easy to dig up the root. Be very careful when you're use gloves. But if you only have one of these things, don't assume that it's invasive yet, and it could be rare and endangered. So don't take a picture of it, of the root, just leave it intact. The other thing I like to point out is that you can use many identification apps like iNaturalist, PlantSap, and you can talk to us about, you know, what that is. The other thing that's really good for producers is Okanagan Invasive Species Online. It's called oizo.ca. And my sister organization in the Okanagan and Similkameen did that as a climate action project. And you can sort species by name, commodity, and color of flower, things like that. And it's a really comprehensive identification and management resource that I highly recommend. You look at most of the species they have, we have. So, and then I'm at my questions. So I'm gonna stop sharing and I'm gonna let our questions get started. And if you have questions for Chelsea, I just want you guys to be able to get to her first, because she's actually going to have to jump off and go to another meeting right at 5 o'clock. So I'm going to end the show and stop sharing my screen. And hello. So yeah, so feel free to just unmute yourself and or put up your hand, whatever. It's pretty casual because we have so few people. And but yeah, go for it. And I would, if no one's going to jump in quickly, I will definitely ask Chelsea what invasive plants, and we're going to do some work on the garden today, or not today, but this year, to see what she's got. But just mention a few of the things that you were dealing with up there, and what you found that, you know, was or wasn't working.
Yeah. I can't say I know if everything is invasive. I'll just name the ones that act invasively. Bindweed being one of them. And I don't know how to define the different types of bindweed. People call it morning glory. I think there is more than one type. My feeling is we probably have both of them or more than that. Yeah, we definitely had pretty bad bindweed. Surprisingly, it seemed like it didn't stunt too much of our growth this year and our veggies and whatnot. You know, we did do a lot of weeding, but we definitely weren't able to keep up with everything. So maybe it stunted other things more than others, but like our garlic seemed to do really well, and our soil is fairly sandy, so I don't know if it thrives in sandy soil or just all soils, but any invasives or any weeds that thrive in sandy soil is probably something that we have. We have the one that I call it a tumbleweed. It's super spiky. You probably all know what I'm talking about if you live around here. I don't know what that's
It's
called.
probably Russian thistle. It's,
Probably.
yeah, it looks like the classic tumbleweed. If you look online down in the States, they like make large like snowmen and like crazy things out of this stuff. But yeah, that stuff, it's prickly, and it will like have a tiny little purplish flower for like a hot minute and then go completely to that kind of pokey. And then its
Mm-hmm.
cousin Cochia looks exactly the same, but it's not. It's soft to the touch.
Oh, okay, interesting. Yeah, I think we only have the spiky one, but there's
Mhm.
definitely a very large section of our field. I think it's pretty bad there. It seems like it's relatively easy to remove in terms of just pulling it out. Maybe that's because our soils are so sandy, but it's definitely there. I felt like it was one that we didn't see till a bit later in the season, and we didn't really see much of it at all where we were cultivating things. So
Hmm.
I don't know if it's invasive or not, but we handled that one for the most part. Hopefully its presence will go down the more we're planting other things in there. Um, we definitely have lamb's quarters, we have pigweed. There's a little bit of horiolism. I don't see it that much, but when I do, I try and pull it out. Um, we have, yeah, sunflowers aren't invasive. There's a lot of them though. We Yeah, we had this one particular one that I'm trying to remember now exactly what it was called. I think it was called German wort or something. German, does that ring a bell? It has a purple flower and it has a sort of like a Velcro feel on the stem.
Hmm.
Really sticky, like cleavers and stuff. You know what I mean? Anyways, it has a very strange texture. If we when it pops up again, there was like one big patch of it where our garlic was growing, and it did turn really spiky as well. We pulled it out a bunch of times, but it did come back. So
Okay.
I definitely identified it at one point. If I remember the exact name, I'll get in touch with you. But
Okay.
yeah, that's a bunch of the ones that we have up there anyway. I'm sure there's more that I'm forgetting right now when everything's dead.
Nice. Oh, well, that's okay as things come up. And it sounds like, I mean, from your presentation, the food won. I mean, right? The weeds did not win. So you're doing something right for sure. Um,
Yeah.
Jessica was wondering what the recommendations that probably Sue for your cover, like for, and maybe to you too, Chelsea, for cover crops, like seed mixes. Now she does mention wildflowers to use for reseeding, and I'll just jump in on the wildflower one, and then you guys can talk about the seed mixes that you maybe have used, or fall rye. We've done fall rye in a couple spots, but just to be really careful, even with some of our, what seems to be really like good, like is the wildflower mixes can contain things that aren't going to be either good for, they do often contain like bachelor's buttons and other invasive plants. So then, and they're the ones that seed like crazy and take over. And so in the end, your wildflower mix has become a wildflower monoculture. So I always say careful with those, but West Coast Seeds does have some cover crop mixes that I've been told have been working quite well for people. And one of them, someone said recently, the bee mix did seem to work, but it sounded like the yarrow took over. So there's certain, in those mixes, you'll have the mixes that they won't stay as diverse depending on the species that are in there. So, but that's okay if they're the ones that you want to persist and they're low growing and green and they're fine, that's okay too. But I'll just hand it over to Sue or Chelsea to comment on that one.
Yeah, I'll jump in. So I like to try and convert things that would be weeds into food plants. So I like using creeping thyme. I like using yarrow. And so even allowing, I save seeds, right? So there's always things like mustards in particular, regrow really well. But I focus also on flowers like marigolds or nasturtiums, things, basically anything that's going to shade the ground is going to function to keep the weeds down. And the more edible they are, the better, as far as I'm concerned. So I've been working more to try and get those sorts of things established, because yeah, then it's double duty, right?
Did you use any cover crops? I thought you might have said something, Chelsea.
Yeah, in our fields where we did vegetables and whatnot, I was able to get a smallish cover crop of rye on there in the fall. Like it was late fall, so it had a chance. Maybe I think the tallest it got before we cut it down was about 2.5 feet in one section of the field. But I think that, like I said, it's a bit hard to know because I only have one season at this farm. So maybe at the end of the summer I'd be able to comment more. But I think the rye did help suppress, if you have any particular really dominant weed, like growing anything else that is going to benefit the soil is going to be better than the weed that you don't want there, really. So, and rye is just, it's like doesn't need a ton of water. It's very frost hardy. It does really compete. And we found that if it's something where you're wanting to grow vegetables like we were, as long as you cut it down and till it in before it goes to seed, we didn't have problems with it coming back. It added a lot of biomass with the roots. Again, it's hard to say what it actually added in terms of nutrients and whatnot, but our vegetables did well and we didn't add crazy amounts of anything, compost or fertilizer wise. So I think it's definitely worth it if you have time for a cover crop and you can't, cover the soil in any other way. I think it's definitely worth it to grow. And yeah, rye was beautiful. I loved having rye in the field there. Like we were able to save some of our own seed and seed it in our garlic again this year. So that's pretty cool. We've got a bit of a stock of rye seed going there now. But yeah, we didn't have a chance to use any other cover crops. I would love to try using clover. I would love to try using rye and cover crops in pathways as a means of dealing with some of the bindweed. I think having like rye that we just continually cut down in the pathways might really help our bindweed situation.
Nice. Yeah, that would be really useful for a lot of people, because when I lived in Conway for years, people end up just giving up because there's certain things that bindweed will, choke out and you really can't grow it, or you're having to like do major raised beds and things like that. So I also just put in, I really enjoyed, it's quite a long presentation, but there's a couple different cover crop ones from Farm Folk, City Folk in the on the YouTube, and the one I posted, actually, I'll just do copy and paste, but there was a cover crop one from the Okanagan, and I'll put that one in as well. The other one was from the Fraser Valley. So they did a big review and brought some people in and did some study stuff, and then they shared it. So so take a look at that too. I'm just going to hand it over. Does anyone else have another question? Karen, go for it.
Sorry, I was busy copying and pasting the YouTube link and then not turning mute off. I guess I just was wondering, I had a question for Sue with regard to a recommendation on pasture mix, but also Chelsea, it sounds like you do a lot of tilling, but what do you guys think in terms of till, no till for invasives?
I'll just jump in with that one first. I like I said, I don't have a ton of experience like managing this amount of space. So I feel like what I've learned so far is that especially with the till versus no till, is that it's a constant balance of priorities. Like depending on the texture of your soil, it's really hard to get away with not tilling. I do think that like with relation to weeds and specifically with the bindweed, that we will probably benefit from not tilling simply because we know that the bindweed is under there already. And every time we till it, like we just cut it up into tinier pieces and they come back, like with more heads and arms. That being said, I also found that the more heads and arms they have, the weaker the whole plant is, and you can like keep pulling it out. So I really don't know. We couldn't keep up with the weeding anyway, and I needed to till in the rye. So I think it was worth it to till it this year. Our soil is pretty sandy, and we did just invest in a broad fork this year, so we'll definitely be experimenting with no-till. But we also, we have a very nice tiller that was bought before I started working, and it has lots of different implements that we could probably experiment with that aren't all just the straight tiller. So, yeah.
I also wanted to just caution that I think that the tiller might be used to create a fire guard next to the wetland every year. I think that you should ask where your tiller is being used other than the farm, because every year that right near the wetland for a fire guard, it's done every year. And the cheatgrass comes in, like everything comes, there's quite a lot of different invasives, including the wild parsnip. So just check on that.
Yeah, hopefully. I think that would probably be their tractor. I think like it has a tractor, and O&M kind of does that. Ours is like a nice BCS farm tiller. I hope nobody's using that for the fire guard.
Good. Sue, did you want to contribute to that conversation?
Yeah. First, I just wanted to say chickens love bindweed. So it's an easy fix if you can put a chicken tractor in and just put them wherever the bindweed is, or cut it and feed it to them, but they gobble it up. It's a wonderful food for chickens. In terms of pasture mix, Karen, what were you thinking? Like, what is it, a more specific question?
Well, we've got space out the back that like what we call the redheaded stepchild pasture, which has a car buried in it. It was where we had the pigs, but without the pigs there, they turned it in, but we didn't have pigs last year. So all the cochilla and everything is back up. Is there a pasture mix that you would particularly recommend for something that's not being watered all the time? Maybe you have to water it to get it going, but that's...
Yeah, the dryland pasture mix is the one that I tend to use, because you have to water it to get it going. You don't necessarily have to water it all the time. But when it comes to places like that, like my driveway is interesting, and even parts of Texas Creek, like on the roadside where they put the alfalfa in, we've had way less invasives than we ever did before. So if you're not particularly concerned about balance, the alfalfa can do a pretty amazing job. It's deep rooted. It is a pollinator source. So I guess the risk of parasitic daughter makes me worried, but so far it's not out here yet. I use the dryland pasture mix because it's got, it works well here. So
and what's in a dryland pasture mix?
Off the top of my head, I can't remember. So, but there, as opposed to like when you go to buy it, you buy the dry or the non-irrigated one. That's the big ticket is, yeah, they sell pasture mix as irrigated pasture and non-irrigated. You definitely want to go to the non-irrigated side because that just makes life easier. It's so hot here. Yeah, so they tend to have plants that are perennial and deeper rooted than some of the other mixes. So, and I like using white clover where I can in terms of if I have a really bad invasive patch, then that's where I'll focus the alfalfa or the clover just to try and cover it. And they don't necessarily stay all that long, but at least it helps to smother things. So
I just find sometimes with the clovers and the alfalfa, it's if you do want to get it out, it's hard.
exactly. It'll be really hard. That's exactly the issue. So it'll be really hard to get rid of if you decide you don't want it. So
Yeah.
that's the downside.
Thank you.
Courtney, go ahead.
Yeah, my question was for hi Chelsea.
Hi.
Was about the daughter as well, because I noticed a patch down where we are. And before where I just noticed it was out in Bridge River, which I'm sure you guys are aware, it's pretty bad out there. And so it's obviously moving over. And last year when I was hiking up to Red Rocks, I saw quite a bit of it up there as well. So, so the Tiger Torch, I mean, maybe that's something that I can try and attack that patch that we have, right now when we're kind of able to burn. But is there a specific time when it goes to seed so that if you remove it before that time, kind of like, that you can kind of like mitigate the spread a little bit?
I am just looking up to see if I can see when that seeds, because basically, if you let it go to seed, then you're definitely, there's a few different things. I'm probably gonna have to get back to you because it's there, there's a whole bunch of different types of daughter, but generally it's saying that it's more of a summer annual. So I think the earlier in the spring you can get to it, the better. And if you know where that patch is already, I would say try to weed whack down all the host. So then even if you will have seeds, you'll have seeds there, and they'll try to come up and burrow into the stem, and that will cause them to seed again. So basically you're trying to like eliminate or suppress. And if you can keep a good cover like of other grass or whatnot, then your chances of it not growing is quite good. Although I've seen it even burrow into like crested wheatgrass. So
Wow.
you just need to keep it short, like whatever you've got going on there for a number of years, and then hope that whatever, the seed source just eventually is being out competed. Like it won't be able to like get through that mat of grass or whatever's happening on there. So
Right.
yeah, not so good. And yeah, I did know it's on Red Rock, and we've been working, Bridge River has been working very hard to like weed whack every year and stuff like that. So, and just so you guys know that Chelsea had to take off, but she left her email there, and like them on Facebook so that you can follow what's happening in the farm, because they're gonna be selling things, which is so great at the market. When definitely we have other farms that have not been able to carry on, like airport gardens and things like that. So keep in touch, Courtney. Let me know if there's anything else that I can come and look at or give some advice. Definitely when it comes to the daughter, it's like, don't let anything come in basically that you don't know where it's been, especially soil. Yeah, soil and equipment for sure.
For sure. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Did anybody else have any other questions? I know that a few people said they were just listening in, which is great. And I appreciate you guys being here. It's such knowledge. And does anyone have anything to share that they've done on their property? Like Karen and Jeff, you guys are, organic apple orchard out there. And I see, mowing between, but keeping it a little bit longer near the, the actual like bases of the trees. But are there any things that you're working on that you think that have worked and that you would consider sharing?
Well, mostly we work on making sure you're blindfolded when you come on the property so that you can actually just sort of enjoy yourself and not
Yeah.
have to look around going, what the heck? I mean, yeah, I to be honest, the mowing between and leaving under the trees is more a question of we just don't have the time to hand mow under each of the trees. Although, Jeff, you have got some new mowing equipment that takes a bigger swath. And then, yeah, I think we try anything that looks like it's going to seed, just keep it mowed down. If we can't actually dig it out, you know that donkey tail spurge is still there. Happily, I don't react to it, so I just pull it out as much as I can. But I guess my thing would be, it'd be great if you guys had a program where you could hire someone to come on and give you the invasive inventory to say, okay, well, this is what we found here, and go and look up what you need to do to get rid of it, so that we could at least be aware of what's here. I think that's for me, as you know, Jackie, I'm kind of going, is this a thing? Do I have to worry about this? And then there's other things that I suddenly look at and I go, oh crap, that's a thing, and I didn't even know that. So yeah, if ever you have the funding to have a program where, and I mean, I would pay for that, to have someone come on the farm and go, yeah, you need to deal with all of this. So maybe when some of your students are going,
well, definitely the initial, like, the odd, if it's something that we can do like in an hour and kind of like be able to give that advice or say, here's X, Y, and Z plan. And don't worry, you're not alone when it comes to, both Sue and I have our own masses of problems and issues that my diversity is a little lower maybe than Sue's, but I have large, sections of things that are here I'm pulling out. But like you said, it's kind of like, well, what is it, and how should you prioritize it? And then if you've got, like Sue's been dealing with, like, basically what her, she's got lots of different things, but those particular species and those particular things like burdock and whatnot were a higher priority for her, based on different things. And for sure, definitely her livestock and burdock, that is not a good thing. You don't want that getting in any of your animals, because it can create health issues, as well as the horiolism and cheatgrass for fire. So I think that's, if it gets sort of beyond the hour or whatever, and then you need kind of something a little bit more, and that's where I think with farmers, and we would try to find either a funding source to cover that off, and if we have the capacity with our students to do that, or maybe it's a fee for service, which we've never done before, but I know in other regions, if they have the capacity, they'll you just hire a group of us, or like Invasive and PIAG, and we come on and we'll do that assessment. So I think at this point for the farmers, we'd like to keep that cost to a minimum, if not nothing at all, so that that's not something you have to bear. So we, so far we've done okay at being able to go to people's places and check things out, or like, what the heck is this thing? And like I said, send me the pictures and usually I can figure it out pretty quick.
And just to round up the conversation there. So we're asking about mowing under the trees. We definitely have bindweed within the grass. And so mowing it just kind of keeps that under control to a degree, but it's certainly there. And burdock is the other one that we've got a couple of small isolated patches on the property with burdock. And those I've just been managing by cutting them before they go to seed. And I'm feeling pretty good about that. Like as of last summer, I think, obviously this summer will tell, but I think I've got a solid handle on it. And
we'll see.
yeah, no, I'm feeling good about it. So I think it's on the way out.
Yeah, and now that we have Decker, the walking invasive vector dog, that just takes seeds with him everywhere he goes.
Yeah, poor Decker. He's a little bit of an attractant, unfortunately. I mean, my dogs have really, really smooth fur, and even they still pick it up. So Well,
Yeah.
we did do a little article this time just to put a plug in for Elris's monthly articles that we share with partners and on our newsletter. It will be in April about burdock and mostly manual control, but I wanted to say that in the Fountain Valley, they've actually done some very good work. And because it's a biennial and you've got, you know, year one where it's looks like a rhubarb, and then year two it bolts and creates the flowering and stuff, it does reproduce primarily by seed. So you're definitely, if you can get the seed production down and create some competition, you can have some good wins. That's for sure. Yeah.
I wanted to add what I do on the farm in my orchard is I've moved the ducks into the orchard for the last few years, and they do an amazing job. So they're better. The chickens dig a lot, right, and scratch everything up. The ducks do a much nicer job at mowing the lawn, and they eat a tremendous amount of insects, way more than chickens do. They'll even eat mice, which is awesome. So I found them to be really effective in the orchard in particular, but they won't eat the dropped fruit. So I think I have to have ducks and maybe 2 chickens, and then that might be the right combination. So that's what I'm going to try.
You can't, the cows will damage the trees, right? Even your little guys. Yeah.
Yep. But the ducks are great. They don't damage the trees. And like I said, they're pretty effective at, they love, same as chickens. So they love dandelions and bindweed, and they eat a tremendous amount of, they will eradicate dandelions. That's how much they love dandelions. So yeah.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. Yeah.
I actually have to protect dandelions because I need them on the farm for everybody loves dandelions. So yeah, I have to make sure I leave some away from the ducks. So
Oh, wow.
That's awesome.
Oh, also,
I-
just to
yeah,
ask, can
go
we get a copy of the transcript of the meeting chat? Because if there's some good, I think we can do that, can't we? Can you
Yeah,
do
I
that?
think so.
Yeah, because there's just good stuff in there. I already tried to copy and paste one link, and then I would like this one because I'll never remember how to spell that.
Yeah, for sure. I'll make sure that I know that the meeting chat automatically gets saved, and I can share that as my here. Yeah, I can totally share that. We're coming up on 5:14, and I promised it would only be sort of like an hour-ish, but we can definitely get people in touch with you know, our speakers and myself. I'll put I'm at info at as I can't type right now at elris.ca, and I'm not doing very well with the F. So but if there's other questions you have later, then we can definitely put you in touch with people and share that information. But did anybody else have any other questions out there? Like, I know there's a few of you guys that do farming. We're lucky to have a few people from different areas. I know that recently somebody asked me about farming and just even the heat dome, and you know, that's definitely a thing a couple of years ago. So I'm hoping that we don't have that, but definitely it was an issue. So, all right. Well, doesn't look like we have any more questions, but I just want to thank everyone for being here. And it's been awesome. I think that we'll try to do something like this again, and maybe have a couple different speakers and new topics, and be able to share and hear what other people are doing. I feel like it's such a good way to like try things locally. So thanks everyone for showing up, and I will let everyone go, and I will think I can stop recording now.